Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Loving obeisances unto the Supreme Being Vasudeva, who is everything there is. Janmadyasya yato anvayadi taratascha artheshu abhigyaswarat tene brahmahridaya adikavaye muhyanti yat surayah tejo vari mridam yatha vinimayo yatra sargo mrisha dhamna svena sada nirastakuhakam satyam param dhimahi. We meditate upon the transcendent absolute being from whom springs forth this universe. He is present in all that exists and yet distinct from everything. He is fully conscious and totally independent. He revealed to the first seer Brahma the import of Vedic wisdom. The material creation, made of threefold gunas, appears in him as though real, like water in a mirage. Being eternally self effulgent, he is ever free of the illusion Maya of the material world. We meditate upon him, the Supreme Being. Nigamakalpataror galitam phalam shukamukad amrutadrava sanyutam pibata bhagavatam rasamalayam muhuraho rasika bhuvi bhavukaha. O devotees who relish a taste for divine love, Bhagavatam is the fully ripened fruit of the wish-yielding tree of Vedas, flowing as immortal nectar from Shuka Brahma Rishi. Go on drinking this nectar day after day. So now we are entering the 8th chapter of the 3rd Skandha of Srimad Bhagavatam. We are in the middle of this long dialogue between Vidura and the sage Maitreya. So we saw in the last chapter, Vidura was explained the mystery of Maya, how, as the verse we just chanted, the first verse of Bhagavatam says, he is present in everything that exists and yet distinct from everything, and he is ever free of his own energy Maya. So the Maya that apparently projects this whole universe, creates, sustains, and dissolves it, and in which the Supreme Being descends as avatars, all of this happens while he is completely both involved in it as well as free of it. And therefore, he is totally independent and ever distinct from the Maya. And then after that was explained, Vidura asked a bunch of questions about the sub-creation of how Brahma went about the creation of all the animate and inanimate beings and all the various phenomena such as various beings, various spheres in terms of space and activities and all the rest. And then he finally concluded by saying the intent of knowing all this is so that one can do one's duty correctly, so that one can realize the Supreme Being Hari. So, with this, he also glorified Maitreya by saying, since he has accepted Maitreya as his Guru, he said, it's only by the grace of the Guru that one can learn the supreme wisdom and not by one's own effort. So please be kind to share with me. So now Maitreya begins his response by first praising Vidura by saying, you are very worthy of adoration even by noble men, because you're so devoted, and also you lend a fresh and new charm at every step and every moment in singing the glories of the Supreme Being. So, this is the quality of a disciple or a devotee that Vidura exemplifies by both glorifying the Supreme Being and the Guru, who is non different, and thereby taking the position of humble and at the same time earnest and sincere learner of this wisdom by asking questions, not simply blindly accepting anything, but asking the right questions, at the same time asking with the right attitude of respect and humility. And that's why Maitreya praises him by saying, you are so perfect in the way you are asking these questions, And this is an example for everyone. You lend charm at every step and every moment. So he says now, in order to relieve the misery of men in general, and to answer your question, I will narrate to you Bhagavatam itself, which was taught by Sankarshana to the seers. So here again we see that Bhagavatam was taught by first the Supreme Being Vasudeva to Brahma. We also saw the same Bhagavatam in its essence taught by Brahma to Narada, and then it was revealed by Narada to Vyasa, and then Vyasa in turn composed it and taught it to his son Shuka, and Shuka has been narrating it to Parikshit. Meanwhile, the same Bhagavatam was also revealed to Sankarshana because the same teaching is coming through different disciplic successions. So, coming through Brahma and similarly coming through Sankarshana. Sankarshana represents the first expansion of Vasudeva. We have seen in the very beginning too that there are three expansions from Vasudeva: Sankarshana, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. And that's why when Krishna appears, Krishna is Vasudeva, and the first expansion, Sankarshana, is Balaram, and the second expansion, Pradyumna, is his son, and Aniruddha, the last expansion, is his grandson. So these expansions also take a humanly form during the pastimes of Krishna, but the original Lord Sankarshana is the known as the Sesha, or the thousand-headed elephant, who offers the seat in which the Supreme Being rests. So this Supreme rest abode of Narayana is called as Sankarshana. And Sankarshana is also considered the Adi Guru, the first teacher, because he represents the principle of Guru itself, and therefore he also is uniquely qualified to teach Bhagavatam, and therefore he was the teacher of Sanaka and others. So there are four sages who have come or referred to in the past too. They are called the first sons of Brahma. They are Sanaka, Sanatana, Sanandana, Sanatkumara. These four sages are very highly qualified. They are very young, like young boys, but highly evolved, and they are the ones who learn Bhagavatam from Sankarshana. So it is said that these four, they took dip in the holy river Ganga and approached Sankarshana, and Sankarshana, who was at the time engaged in meditation, upon the arrival of these four sages, sagely boys, he opened his eyes from his meditation on his own source, which is Vasudeva, and he turned towards them, and they adored his lotus feet, and the sages repeatedly glorified this great Sankarshana, who is the first expansion, as we said, of Vasudeva, and the first Guru, and therefore the four brothers, Sanakadi sages, they glorified Sankarshana, and Sankarshana was very pleased, and he taught Bhagavatam to these four sages. So when we say Bhagavatam here, Bhagavatam has many layers of meaning. At the root of the word, Bhagavatam is the science of Bhagavan. That is to say, the knowledge about Bhagavan, the truth about Bhagavan, and the way to realize the truth is Bhagavatam. And therefore, when the Supreme Being Vasudeva taught Brahma in four verses, that is also the entire Bhagavatam. Similarly, when Sankarshana is teaching the same truth to these four sages, that is also the entire Bhagavatam. When Brahma teaches Narada in a more expanded form, that is also Bhagavatam. And when finally Shukabrahma Rishi teaches it to Parikshit in the most expanded form, which contains the 12 skandhas, and as we said, covers all the topics of starting from creation to mercy to the different time frames, manvantaras, to leading all the way up to Ashraya, the 10 topics. The entire 12 books with these 10 topics, the whole work is also Bhagavatam, and any other work that is pure in nature and that glorifies the Supreme Being is also Bhagavatam in one sense. So Bhagavatam is non-different from Bhagavatas, and Bhagavatas are those who abide in the Supreme Being. And therefore, there is many references in Bhagavatam itself of different personalities teaching Bhagavatam, and if it is understood correctly, that Bhagavatam is not just this entire work of 18,000 verses, though that is what is commonly referred to as Bhagavatam, the entire work of 18,000 verses with 12 skandhas or 12 cantos. That is the common reference to Bhagavatam, but the essence of it can be said in 4 verses. It can be said in one verse, which is the very first verse we chant every day. It can be said in a few more verses and in different ways. So Sankarshana here teaches his version of Bhagavatam to Sanakadi rishis, and then it is said, Maitreya says rather, that Sanakadi rishis then taught it to a sage called Sankhayana, and this Sankhayana, who is a great Paramahamsa, a great Jnani, and a great sage, a devotee, he taught it to his disciple, his student, which is Parashara. And Parashara is the father of Vyasa, as we have referred to before, and also the teacher of Maitreya. So Maitreya and Vyasa are both friends and both students of Vyasa's father Parashara. So when Parashara taught it, he taught it to both his son Vyasa as well as to this Maitreya, and Maitreya learned it from him. And now Maitreya says, I am now teaching you the same Bhagavatam. So he is revealing his version. And again, after revealing that the whole universe before coming into being was Narayana alone, who slept in the causal waters for a long time without any activity, with all the latent tendencies of the various jivas, that is to say, the energy of various individual beings, all submerged in him, and all potency submerged in him, just as fire is latent in wood. Similarly, everything was latent in him, and he slept on those causal waters, as it were, for a long time, and then he woke up from that yoga nidra, from that sleep of yoga. So it's not sleep which is of the nature of ignorance, but it is a sleep which is fully conscious. That's why it's called yoga nidra. From this sleep of yoga nidra, the Supreme Lord Vishnu or Narayana opened his eyes, and he decided to bring forth the universe through his own Maya, which we saw already, the first primary creation of how time impelled the three gunas out of equilibrium, and along with the jivas, the ego came forth, which resulted in the elements and all the rest. Now he says that after all that happened, the first created being, which is Brahma, came forth from his navel, as it were, and that's why Brahma is called the self-born, as in Swayambhu, because he doesn't have any biological parents. He came directly from the Supreme Being as the first created being, and therefore Brahma is called the Swayambhuva, or the self-born. And this Brahma, once he came out of the lotus navel of the Supreme Lord, what he saw was just him alone sitting on this lotus like structure. He couldn't even see anything. It was so vast, and he could only be alone. And so very interestingly and beautifully, the first question he asks himself is, who am I? He says, who am I seated on this lotus? Because he doesn't know what his identity is. And this is the essential question that everybody has. When they truly go into the essence of all questions, it boils down to one question, which is, who am I? So, normally we take ourselves to be the body or the mind or thoughts or feelings, and we take different roles, and we are so caught up in those roles that we don't even look into this core question of who am I. But when we look at it closely, we recognize that the I we take ourselves to be is all impermanent, all false, and therefore has no substantial or essential nature to it. And then the question remains, who am I? Which, when we probe into, we can realize the source of our being. So, that same question, the essence of self inquiry, was asked by Brahma when he first came forth. And then Brahma resolved to find the answer to this question. So it says he dove into the water and he tried to go to the depth of it to find out. So this is a way of saying how seekers, when the question who am I comes up, when they go into inquiry, they put in all this effort to look for the source through the impenetrable darkness, as it were, for a long, long time, only to come back empty handed, because any attempt to find the infinite from a finite mind always comes back empty. So, this search for realizing one's source, realizing the infinite, is always going to return empty handed, because it is the finite mind that's asking the question. So that is why it is said that there is no answer to the question, who am I? If we ask the question and recognize the limitation of all answers, and thereby remain quiet, then the truth can shine on its own. But Brahma, as symbolizing all seekers, put in all effort to actively find an answer, and he could not. So, this is a lesson for everyone, that when the inquiry happens, one has to not search for an answer, but simply remain silent and surrender the question itself to the Supreme Being, and let him reveal whatever he reveals. And that is the easy way, the direct way, rather than trying to actively search for an answer. So that's what Brahma shows here. And after he gave up, it is said at last he gave up the search, and then when he returned to his resting place and he just closed his eyes, then, as we saw earlier, he was asked to do penance, tapa, which is tapas or penance. And when he did that penance for a long time, finally he was revealed the source, which is the Supreme Being Narayana. We saw this also during the Chatushloki Bhagavatam, that Brahma, after doing tapas, was revealed the form of Narayana, which is a very beautiful form with the same description as Krishna. That is why Krishna is called as Bhagavan Swayam. Bhagavatam says Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam, because when Krishna appears on this earth, he is exactly of the same form as Narayana, with the same Sudarshana chakra in his hand, wearing yellow colored silk clothes, wearing a crown on his head, and all the wearing a vanamala, that is a forest garland. And so all the descriptions that are there for the Supreme Being Narayana is exactly how Krishna appears when he appears for his pastimes on earth. So, and also with the same darkish cloud like complexion called Shyama, and shining and lotus-like face. Exactly. So the way Krishna appears on earth during his earthly pastime is the exact form of Narayana, and that is why Narayana is called as, or the descent of Krishna is rather called as Swayam Bhagavan. So in this form, Narayana appears to Brahma, and Brahma is very pleased to see this beautiful form of Narayana, and he sees that everything, all beauty, is completely covered by this one supreme being. So, what is conveyed here is the source of all beauty, whether it's natural beauty, when one goes to see a sunset, or go to the woods, or go to an ocean, or when it is man made beauty, such as in art or in other various creations, all of these are ultimately only pale imitations or reflections of the beauty of the Supreme Being. So that's why it is said that the nature of truth is beautiful and auspicious. So, truth, beauty, and goodness always go together. That's why it's called Satyam, Shivam, Sundaram. Satyam is truth, Shivam is auspiciousness or goodness, and Sundaram is beauty. So, the highest beauty is the truth itself, which is God, and every other beauty, in the right sense, is of the nature of truth and goodness. Anything else that is not of the nature of goodness, and that is not rooted in recognizing the truth, is not truly beautiful. So, when we look at nature, for example, it helps us realize the truth by the awe inspiring complexity and the beauty of it. And it is also very auspicious because it is orderly and it does everything perfectly. So, that's why nature is also situated in truth, beauty, and goodness. And even man made works that help us recognize all three together are alone beautiful when they are rooted in truth, in exposing or expounding upon the truth, and in the mode of goodness, then they can be really beautiful. So, that beauty is what the original source of all this beauty is, the Supreme Being. And so, that's the beauty that Brahma perceives here, and he is completely speechless. He has a clear view of Sri Hari standing in front of him. And now, after getting this vision and also hearing from him the Chatushloki Bhagavatam, which we already saw, Brahma now goes about to embark on the task of creation, because now he is given the quality of Rajas. So the three gunas, Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas, as we saw, came from the Supreme Being, but it is Rajas, the sense of activity, that is necessary for creation. As we already saw, the sense of goodness or Sattva is necessary for sustaining the universe, which is handled by Vishnu in an expansion. And the sense of destruction or dissolution requires Tamas, and that's handled by Rudra, who is an expansion of Shiva. So Brahma, on the other hand, being the creator, needs to be in the mood of Rajas or activity. So he is endowed with the quality of Rajas, and he is now desiring to undertake the mighty work of evolving the creation. But when he recognizes that this is what he needs to do as the way of setting example for everyone, he first extols the Lord, glorifies the Lord by saying a beautiful prayer. Because when we embark on any activity, if we recognize that the very activity is possible only through the Supreme Being, who is the indwelling spirit as well as the energy that sustains everything outside as well. So both within and without is all Him, and therefore it is only by Him, of Him, in Him that everything happens. And to recognize that and to glorify Him is the right way to do anything free of any sense of ego or doership. So Brahma sets this example when he goes about the activity of creation itself by first praying to the Supreme Being. Before that, the one important point that is also said is Brahma looks on all directions when he is initially lost, and that is why Brahma is known to have four faces, because he has eyes on all four directions, and it is symbolically showing that the one who is embarking on creation has to be aware of all aspects without any blind spots. And this is very true for anyone who is embarking on any true noble creation, is to not have any blind spots. And Brahma is symbolized, that's why, by having four heads. So in any case, after Brahma gets this beautiful vision of the Supreme Being, he resolves to go about creation in the mode of Rajas by first offering a beautiful prayer. And this prayer will come in the next chapter, the long prayer of Brahma, which glorifies the Lord, which is also a great prayer for all of us to dwell on and to connect with. So, Brahma now resolves to say this beautiful prayer, and with this we end this chapter. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.